Hey guys, welcome to Video Game Corner. It's me, Jason, and in 5 days, on February 25th, Castlevania 2, Lords of Shadow, or Castlevania Lords of Shadow 2 comes out on the PS3 and the Xbox 360, and I think PC. So I'm going to go ahead and start to talk a little bit about the Castlevania series. I'm going to go through each game and just kind of give a little quick description and just to talk about my experience with it. So let's start with the original Castlevania 1. Came out in, I believe, 85 for the, not the Famicom, but I think it was called the MSX, I believe. I'm not 100% sure on that. I didn't really look it up, but I think that's what it was on. Or some other computer, Japanese computer. It was, I've played the emulator of it, and it seems like it's a slower version. It's not as good. Kind of reminds me of the whole Dragon Quest, the first one, how the Japanese version isn't as smooth as the American version. Well, anyway, we got this, I believe, in 86, I think, or 87. 87, it looks like. But I remember as a kid, my cousins renting this and saying, "Hey, Jason, try this game out. It's Castlevania." And I remember getting slaughtered in it. The game is just so ridiculously hard. And a lot of it has to do with it's just hard to control the characters. Because you play as Simon Belmont in it, and you basically you can only whip in one direction. It's a little bit of platforming, and you're just going from left to right. It's your classic NES platforming game. But they were onto something because they made more, and the series has evolved. And they've tried some games that weren't as good, or that were criticized a little more, and some games that were loved. So the first game, everybody either likes it to some point, it seems, but it's not the favorite. No one ever calls it their favorite for some reason, but that's okay because it was a starting point, and the game, you know, has a lot of nostalgia for a lot of gamers. The second game is not very well liked by a lot of people, and then some people love it and some people are kind of in between. That's Castlevania 2, Simon's Quest. I myself like this game. I think it's pretty fun. It's not as difficult as the first game. The bosses are so ridiculously easy, it's kind of a waste of time. And but the one thing that everybody hates about this game is the fact that it's so cryptic. You needed a Nintendo Power to actually know what to do. Because you play as Simon Belmont, it's a few years later, and everybody needs to take Dracula's body parts. All of Dracula's body parts have been spread out over these different castles, different layers, and you need to go and collect them all. And then you fight Dracula at the end, even though, yeah, I think it's more like the Grim Reaper, but it's really weird. I don't know. The game had it had potential, and it was going in a direction that's been used in later games, but Nintendo just wasn't ready for the system just wasn't ready for this type of game, and they made the game too cryptic, and they just screwed up. It seemed rushed because, you know, all the dialogue was misspelled that we make fun of. But it was just something different, and they were experimenting. They didn't really know what to do. I mean, this is all the early days, and we all make fun of it now, but back then they weren't sure. They were still trying to figure out the series. I mean, they didn't know that it was going to be this big video game franchise. Then after that, they made Castlevania 3, Dracula's Curse. Now, this took everything that was good about the first game and made it better. They fixed a lot of the mechanical problems. They actually gave you alternate routes. They gave it more of a storyline, and you could play in and out. You had 3 extra characters. You had Grant Dynasty, Sypha, and Alucard. The first appearance of Alucard, but he doesn't look like the Alucard we see in Symphony of the Night or any of the games after, which are the only ones that be with like the Lords of Shadow 2 and then the 3 coming out. Now, thing is this game is it's really good. It takes place 100 years before the first game. It's a prequel. You play as Trevor Belmont, who was Simon's, I guess, grandfather, great-grandfather, and probably great-great-grandfather. And it's just it's a fun game because you can pick which one of the three characters, and then you can switch out your characters, and you can play as, you know, depending on which one of the three you decide to keep. And you don't even have to face them. You can go alternate direction. I myself like to get Alucard because I like his bat form, and he can fly, and then at the end he has like this cape thing where he throws fireballs up, and the final boss, Dracula, who has three forms, is a lot easier to kill. But it's a really good Castlevania game, and it's probably the best one, or the most loved on the Nintendo set of the three. Then we go into the 16-bit, and we look at the next game in the series, and that's Castlevania 4. And everybody loves this game. This game is very popular. You can whip in all directions. The graphics are fun. It's got a lot of detail. There's a lot of clever level design. I really enjoy this game a lot. I think it's one of my favorites in the series. It's one of those I can just pick up and start playing and just have a blast, no matter, you know, what mood I'm in. So there's not really a lot to say about it. It's a very good game. A lot of the things in this game that they used were used in later Castlevanias, you know, as far as characters and graphics, which I thought was pretty neat. They say it's you play as Simon again, and they say it's like a remake of the first game. I don't know. I guess it kind of is, but I don't know. I decided I don't care. I just like the game. So, and then here's the other game. This is a port off of the TurboGrafx, or it's PC Engine in Japan, but it's TurboGrafx here. The CD-ROM game, Rondo of Blood, Castlevania Rondo of Blood, and this is Dracula X. And this game's pretty cool. You play as Richter, and you can only whip in one direction again. But it's not that big a deal. I mean, I think the game's really good. I think that I think they should have left it as Rondo of Blood with that style, because the final boss, Dracula, is a lot more fun to fight in that. You actually see him in Symphony of the Night, as opposed to the beginning of Symphony of the Night, as opposed to the boss. You get some devil in a Speedo thing, and there's all these different platforms, and it's real tricky to fight, and I mean, it's beatable. They're all beatable. It's just that, I don't know. This game's fun, but it would have been better if it was left alone as Rondo of Blood. Now, I don't own Rondo of Blood, but I just talked a little bit about it, and that's, you know, that's the game that came out that we never got. It was a really strange thing about that game. It also had alternate routes, and you could play as Maria in that game, I believe. And the other thing is that it had cutscenes, actual animated cutscenes, except I think they were in German. I don't know why. It's a Japanese game in German. I don't know the reasoning. Maybe you guys can tell me. The next game in the series was, which is different because it wasn't a Nintendo game. It was made for the Sega Genesis, and it was called Bloodlines. And you don't play as a Belmont at all. You play as, I forget their names, it's on here. And it also takes place in like 1900, the early 1900s, which is really weird. It's like the most modern, I guess, at the time. I know you play John Morris, and the other guy, I never can remember his name. It's gotta be here. Come on, help me out here. There's John Morris, the vampire, or Eric Lecarde. There we go. Eric Lecarde, I actually like playing the game as Eric Lecarde because he has a spear, and then John Morris has a whip. He has the vampire killer. And there's no Belmonts. I don't know. It doesn't make any sense, but I mean, it's a different Castlevania. I don't even know if they consider it canon. but I don't know. I like the game. I think it's a really good game. It was just, it's a lesser known out of the rest of the games. It's not known or talked about as much. But I think it's a pretty good game. I've played through it a couple times as both characters. I do prefer Eric Lacarde. He's got different attacks. So playing through both characters, you actually can take different, in certain areas you can take different paths. And the game is pretty fun. So, because they do different things. Eric Lacarde has this thing where he can do this jump, like this pole vault move, and then John Morris can take his whip and swing from things. So, the one can do what the other can, which is pretty fun. All right, now we're moving to the PS3, PS1, and we've got. My copy is not very nice. I've got Castlevania Symphony of the Night. And this game is a sequel to Rondo of Blood. Not Dracula X, but Rondo of Blood for the PC Engine. And it's a... you start out in the beginning, you're playing the final boss of Rondo of Blood, Dracula, as Richter. And then the story is Richter gets... a couple years later, Richter gets kidnapped or gets lost in the castle. I guess he goes back in, and then Maria Renard, he saved her as a little girl, and Rondo, she's a little more grown up, and she's going to try to save him. And then Alucard wakes up, and he's got to go fight, and he's been asleep for like 300 years. And now he has long, flowing silver hair, and... But yeah, he goes in and you play as Alucard, and it's a really fun game, and it's got so many bosses, and it's all like you can go any direction, and you got to open up other paths to the game, and it's just really fun, and it's an RPG on top of that. You level up, you can change out your equipment, not your outfit, but your weapons, so it's not a complete 100% RPG, but you level up. It's got the main RPG elements, leveling up, and... you get experience points, and then you can also got things, you got different equipment and stuff you can equip. So, but you always have your same outfit. You can't change like armor or anything like that, or outfits, but you can change your shield, your sword, your headwear, rings. So you can do a lot with it. It's a really fun game, and I recommend it more than, I recommend all these to at least try once. Symphony of the Night's it's the fan favorite, and I think it's such a great game, and it was such a good feeling beating it the first time. I was sitting here in the living room on my TV, and I was using a shield attack. It's this shield thing where you use the shield rod, and I had these swords, and it was spinning, and it was pretty fun. So another lesser known PS1 game, by Castlevania game, it's another remake. But it's like it's done really well. It's Castlevania Chronicles. And what it is, you play as Simon Belmont, except he looks really weird. He looks like... they have like two versions of him. In one version, he looks like Simon Belmont from the older games. And then another version, he looks like he's S&M's Simon Belmont. But he's got red hair. Long red hair, which is really weird. But I like that they took the new Simon Belmont in the new series, in the Lords of Shadow series, and they took the red hair, but they made it short and made him look real grisly. He looks more like Wolverine if he was a redhead, like me. And but Castlevania Chronicles is really good. It's got 8 levels. You still only whip in one direction, but it's just a lot of fun. Oh, also on Symphony of the Night, after you beat the game, you can play as Richter Belmont. And in the Japanese version for the Saturn, you can actually play as Richter or Maria when you start the games. You don't have to play as Alucard. It's just not as fun because you don't get all the cool things. It's not an RPG for those guys. It's just an RPG for Alucard. So, you got to figure out what you want to do. Then we go to the PS2. And... the PS2 had a couple really cool games. This one isn't as well liked as a lot of them. It's called Curse of Darkness. It's a full-on RPG. You level up. It's just like Symphony of the Night, except it's 3D. I like this game a lot. It's really hard. You got to level up a lot, though. That's the only problem. And you got to really learn how to roll when you fight the bosses. Trevor Belmont's in this, and the cool thing is, after you beat this game, you can play it again and play as Trevor Belmont, and he looks so cool. And he does all these cool. He's got every single one of his side weapons, like the axe and the holy water. And the holy water does this thing when you throw it. It follows the enemies. It's kind of cool. It hits the ground and then follows the enemies. I mean, there's a lot of cool stuff with Trevor's character, but you can't play it until after you beat the game. And I got about halfway through with Trevor, and it's really challenging to do, but this game, I thought it was really cool. It was different. You play as, I forget his name, but he's a Devil Forge Master, Hector. And as Hector of all names, it doesn't seem very medieval to me. But Hector, he kind of has this Alucard look to him. But he's a Devil Forge Master, so he can basically get these little familiars that he can take with him, and then they help him in different parts, and you can swap them out, and they level up too. And it's actually pretty cool because you can tell them what to do, or you can put them on like autopilot. But when you tell them what to do, you can have them attack enemies, so they help you attack enemies, and then as they get killed, you can bring another one out, and you just, as long as you have them all, you can just keep using them, and you got to level them up. So it's pretty fun. It helps you with the boss battle. I needed them during the final boss, and I don't know. I thought the game was really fun. I thought it was a little too hard. I had to sit there and grind for like a day and a half midway through the game because I just couldn't. I couldn't get any further. I kept dying. But yeah, I think the game's got a lot of. I think it's very, and it's not liked as much. I think it's very underrated, and I think it's very overlooked. And I think we definitely, if you like Castlevania, you should at least give it a try. It's really fun, and I really did enjoy the story in it. It was different, and it takes place a few years after Castlevania 3. That's why you have Trevor Belmont. Trevor Belmont's like my favorite Belmont, so maybe that's why I like it. Here's another one for the PS2. Now, this one was actually liked by fans, and it's Lament of Innocence. It's got RPG elements. You upgrade your HP and your MP, but you don't upgrade your whole person. You just upgrade a few different things, and you have to find them. It's not done by experience points. You have to find the upgrades throughout the mansion that you're in, the castle, Castlevania. Once you find this stuff, you can do that. You can do, so there's platforming in this, like he climbs and hangs from stuff. You can do certain types of jumps. He's got certain cool whip attacks because you use the whip. And it's who you play as. You play as Leon Belmont. He's in the original the original canon. He was the first Belmont to ever go after Dracula. And he finds Gandolfi. Now, Gandolfi is the creator of the vampire killer. So he goes to Gandolfi, who has like a shop outside of Castlevania kind of thing. It's really weird. Because you go back to him to buy things and things like that. And he gives you the vampire killer. And then you go in and you got to fight all the different things. And then there's a character called, there's an extra boss you can get there, optional boss called the Forgotten One. And they actually brought the Forgotten One as the DLC for Lords of Shadow, which I thought was pretty cool. But yeah, it's a really cool game. The PS2 games I think are really good, and I think Castlevania's really hitting its stride about then. But the problem is after that they said, well, no more original storyline. And a lot of fans are really upset. I myself was like, I gave it a chance, and I love the new stuff. I think it's really good. And if I ever feel like I need to go to the old stuff, I go to it. I don't mind. This is one of those situations where it didn't bother me because it was done so well. And that brings us to the PS3/Xbox era. And we have Castlevania Lords of Shadow. And I think this game is pretty good. I think it's amazing. And I like the storyline. And a lot of people, they say, oh, it's a God of War clone, Shadow of the Colossus clone. But what people don't realize is that God of War, and I've said this before, God of War is a clone of Rygar and Soul Reaver. I mean, the climbing in Soul Reaver is almost like exactly like the climbing in God of War when he's climbing walls. What we got to do as gamers is we got to stop worrying about these kinds of things. What they did in here is they took the positive things from games like God of War and Rygar and took out things like QuickTime events. This has a similar style QuickTime event, but it's not the same. This is a whole different breed of QuickTime. It's not the hit this button and this button. It's just stupid. This one actually has this ring, and then this other ring goes in it. Once it goes inside, you hit any button. It was kind of pointless. I didn't see the point in it, but it wasn't like some of those QuickTime events are so ridiculous, and I don't like them. And then with the Shadow of the Colossus, you have a few bosses in here that are similar to like what you see in Shadow of the Colossus, where you're climbing around them and hitting them in different spots. But the difference here is you don't have a grip meter, which is pretty good. But you know what? If they want to take the best features from other games that are really good, that's fine with me. I mean, they've been doing it like you may as well. People always say Mario is the best platformer, but what was it based off of? Back then. They say, oh, it was the best one back then, but everything made after it was a Mario clone, I guess. We need to stop worrying about what's a clone and what's a not. I mean, the gameplay elements, we look at the story. I look at the story and I say to myself, I enjoy the game, and I do. And I think it's a really good story, and I think it's a really good game. And I think the puzzles in here are really challenging too. So that's my opinion on it. Now, there's also a sequel to this game, and it's for the 3DS, and it's called Castlevania Mirror of Fate. Now, the thing is, they've also recently done an HD version that you can download for the PS3. I'm pretty sure they did the Xbox, I don't really know. But they also did a collector's edition where they put Castlevania, Lords of Shadow, and the 2 DLC, and this game on there, onto this set, and then they also gave the Lords of Shadow 2 demo. When I downloaded this, I got the Lords of Shadow 2 demo. Now the demo is out there for everybody to play. But this game is really fun. It takes you back to, it's done in the style, it's got elements from the newer Lords of Shadow, but it's done a left to right, it's done in the classic style. Except you can go anywhere. You're not playing through just like levels. You're going through areas. And it takes place over 3 different time periods. And here's a spoiler. So if you guys don't want to hear a spoiler, fast forward. What it is you play as Simon, who's 36 years old. Then you go back and you play as Alucard, who's the opposite part of Simon. He's playing, you can see where everything ties in. Simon sees Alucard, and you see what Alucard's doing at the same time as Simon. Then you go back and play as Trevor. Now here's where the spoiler comes in. At the end of Trevor is Simon's dad in this version. And this is 32 years before, 25 years earlier. Because Simon's like 8 to 10, something like that. So it was 20-something years earlier. Trevor ends up fighting Dracula, and he ends up getting stabbed, and he's dying. And he says, my blood will be on your hands, Father, because Gabriel Belmont is Dracula in the new canon. And he says no, and he realizes that he just killed his own son, so he cuts his vein, and he's like, drink my blood, and he tells, Trevor, he wants Trevor to live, and Trevor ends up becoming, he puts Trevor in he becomes a vampire, but he puts him in this casket, and this stone casket, and on the top of the casket says Alucard. And we find out that Trevor becomes Alucard, or as they say, Alucard. I love the Scottish accent theme going on. And you find out that because and then there's an extra scene after you complete everything where Alucard's leaving and Simon's like, who are you? Or says something to him, and Alucard's like, he like touches his face like a father would, and then he leaves, and Simon's like, what is this dude's problem? And I don't know if he realized it or not, but Alucard's like, yeah, that's my son, and he's like, he's all grown up, and he's just feeling the fatherly thing. So it's pretty cool. But we're coming up to Castlevania Lords of Shadow. Now, as far as the handhelds, I've played a couple of the games, and they're pretty good, but haven't played them enough to really talk about them. I mean, I played Harmony of Dissonance and Area of Sorrow. So, but that's all I've played, you know. And then I played a couple that Game Boy ones, but I couldn't get through them because they were just terrible. But yeah, there we go. When we got the Castlevania series, we got the new game coming out. So if you're a Castlevania fan and the new games bother you and you don't want to play them, go back and play all these. They're loads of fun to play. There's plenty to choose from. If you are a Castlevania fan, you are looking forward to the new game, then I'll be right there with you on the 25th picking up my copy. So anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed this look back at Castlevania. I'm really looking forward to the new game coming out. I hope it's going to be as good as the first one and as Mirror Fate. So, first two games, so let's hope so. Let's just, cross our fingers and hope that Konami has put the same amount of attention into this game as they did the other two and every game before that. So, this is Video Game Corner. I'm Jason, and I'll see you guys next time. Thanks. Bye.